Let me yank you right into the dimly lit room of Villa Cibo, a stone mansion outside Rome, September 3, 1943, 9 p.m. The air hangs thick with cigar smoke and nervous sweat, so heavy you can almost taste it. A single oil lamp flickers on the wooden table between Italian General Giuseppe Castellano and British General Kenneth Strong, casting long, shaky shadows on the wall. Castellano's hands tremble as he picks up a fountain pen, its metal clip glinting, its inkwell half empty, a gift from his son who died in North Africa. Outside, a summer storm cracks the sky, thunder booms so loud it rattles the windows, mixing with the distant rumble of German Opel Blitz military trucks on the nearby Via Cascia. You understand what this means, General? Strong says, pushing the Armistice document across the table. The paper is crisp, typed in English and Italian, with the Allied star emblem stamped at the top. Once you sign this, there's no going back. Hitler will call it betrayal. Your soldiers, your people, will pay the price. Castellano nods. His tie is askew, pulled loose from hours of fidgeting, and he keeps glancing at the door, its brass handle cold, its lock flimsy, half expecting German Feldgendarmerie, military police, to kick it in at any moment. I understand, he says, his voice barely above a whisper, hoarse from days of no sleep. Italy can't fight anymore. Our soldiers are tired, they haven't had proper rations in weeks. Our people are starving, Rome's markets have nothing but turnips and sawdust bread. This is the only way. For my son. For all our sons. He dips the pen in ink, pauses for 3 heartbeats, then signs his name, Giuseppe Castellano. The ink bleeds into the paper, dark and permanent, marking the end of Italy's 3-year alliance with Nazi Germany. He sets the pen down, and his hands don't stop shaking. Strong leans back, sipping a cup of cold coffee, but he doesn't smile. Both men know the truth, this surrender won't bring peace to Italy. It will bring chaos. What Castellano, and most Italians, didn't know was how fast Germany would strike back. In 48 hours, German Panzer IV tanks would roll into Milan's Piazza del Duomo, Rome's Via del Corso, and Turin's Piazza Castello. They'd disarm Italian soldiers at gunpoint, shoving their rifles into piles and kicking them into gutters. They'd occupy northern Italy, install a puppet government led by the deposed Mussolini, and turn the country into a battlefield where neighbors would betray neighbors. This wasn't just a betrayal of the Axis, it was the start of a new nightmare for millions of Italians. To understand why Italy surrendered in September 1943, you gotta rewind 2 months, to July 10, 1943. That's when the Allies launched Operation Husky, the invasion of Sicily. For 38 sweltering days, British, American, and Canadian troops fought their way across the island's rocky hills and dusty plains. The U.S. 1st Infantry Division, the Big Red One, battled German paratroopers in the town of Gela, where bullets flew so thick they stuck in the walls of olive groves. The British 8th Army, led by Montgomery, slogged through the Etna Mountains, where Italian soldiers often surrendered with their hands up, yelling, "Non più guerra." No more war, before the Allies even fired a shot. By August 17, 1943, the Allies had taken Messina, Sicily's last major city. 160,000 Axis troops were dead, wounded, or captured, 100,000 of them Italian. Sicily was a disaster for Italy, and Mussolini was to blame. Once hailed as Il Duce, the leader, he was now a laughingstock. Italians had watched their sons die in North Africa, where 250,000 Italians were killed, Sicily, and Russia, where another 80,000 froze or starved, for a war they never wanted. Rome's streets were covered in graffiti, Mussolini, Vatine. Mussolini, get out, and guerra finita. War over. On July 25, 1943, Italy's King Victor Emmanuel III, short, portly, with a bushy mustache, called Mussolini to the Quirinal Palace. The king's hands shook as he spoke. He'd feared Mussolini for years, but now he knew the people would revolt if he didn't act. As soon as Mussolini walked into the king's office, Victor Emmanuel said, "Your government has fallen. You're under arrest." Mussolini's face went white. He tried to yell, to protest, but two royal guards grabbed his arms and stuffed him into a black Fiat 500. They drove him to Campo Imperatore, a remote mountain prison in the Apennines, where he was locked in a cell with an iron bed and a small window. The king appointed a new prime minister, Pietro Badoglio, a 69-year-old general with a scar across his cheek, from a World War I bayonet wound, and a reputation for caution. Badoglio's first order: secretly negotiate an armistice with the Allies, before Germany found out. But here's the problem: Italy was still occupied by 600,000 German soldiers. Hitler had sent them to Italy in 1941 to help fight the Allies, but really, to keep an eye on his shaky ally. These weren't just regular troops, they included the 1st Parachute Division, the Fallschirmjäger, elite soldiers who'd fought in Crete, and the 26th Panzer Division, with 150 tanks. Badoglio knew if Germany found out about the armistice talks, those soldiers would invade immediately. So he lied. He sent a telegram to Hitler: "Italy is still with the Axis. We'll fight the Allies to the end. Send more weapons, and we'll hold Rome." Hitler almost believed him. But he had his doubts. He'd seen how Italy collapsed in Sicily, and he didn't trust Badoglio. He ordered Field Marshal Albert Kesselring, commander of German forces in Italy, a tall man with a calm voice and a penchant for cigars, to prepare for the worst. Kesselring moved 10 German divisions to northern Italy, near Milan and Turin. He stockpiled 500,000 gallons of fuel and 1 million rounds of ammunition in warehouses. He even built fortifications along the Apennine Mountains, called the Gustav Line, concrete bunkers, barbed wire, and minefields, just in case Italy betrayed him. Meanwhile, Badoglio's negotiators, led by General Castellano, met with the Allies in a tent near Syracuse, Sicily. The Allies were represented by General Strong and U.S. General Walter Bedell Smith, Eisenhower's chief of staff. The Allies demanded 3 non-negotiable things: Italy must let Allied troops land on its shores, starting with Salerno and Taranto; Italy must disarm its 1.2 million strong military, or join the Allies and fight Germany, and Italy must hand over any German soldiers in its territory. Badoglio hesitated. He was scared of German retaliation, but on September 3, 1943, he gave in. General Castellano signed the armistice in that stormy villa outside Rome, and both sides agreed to keep it secret for 5 days. The Allies wanted to land troops in Italy before Germany could react. But secrets don't stay secret for long, not in a country where everyone was talking about the war. September 8, 1943, 6:30 p.m. Americans and Britons in Rome huddle around radios in hotels and embassies. Italians listen from their windows, leaning out to hear better, whispering to their neighbors. The streets are quiet, too quiet, no cars, no children playing, just the wind blowing through the Roman Forum's ancient columns. Then, the deep, steady voice of U.S. General Dwight Eisenhower fills the air, broadcast from a radio station in Algiers: "The Italian government has signed an armistice with the Allies. Hostilities between Italy and the Allies will cease immediately. All Italian soldiers are ordered to lay down their arms or join the Allied cause." In Berlin, Hitler was in his bunker, eating dinner, sausage and potatoes, when he heard the news. He flew into a rage. He slammed his fist on the table, breaking a plate, and yelled, "They betrayed us. The Italians are cowards. We'll crush them. We'll turn Italy into a graveyard." He picked up the phone and ordered Kesselring, "Disarm every Italian soldier in Germany's zone. Occupy northern Italy. Find Mussolini and free him, dead or alive, but preferably alive. I want him to pay for this." In Rome, chaos erupted. Italian soldiers rushed to their barracks, their boots pounding on the cobblestones, unsure what to do. Some threw down their weapons in the street, old Carcano rifles, rusted pistols, and ran home to their families. Others grabbed their guns, waiting for orders from Badoglio's government. But no orders came. Badoglio and the king had panicked. They'd heard reports of German tanks moving toward Rome, and they knew they couldn't defend the city. At 10 p.m., they jumped into a royal limousine, black, with the Italian coat of arms on the door, and fled south, heading to Brindisi, Allied-controlled territory in Sicily. They didn't tell anyone they were leaving. They left Rome defenseless. September 9, 1943, 6 a.m. The sun rises over Rome, painting the Vatican's dome gold, but the city is silent. Then, the rumble starts. German Panzer IV tanks roll into Rome's streets, their treads crunching on the cobblestones. Soldiers stand on top of the tanks, wearing gray uniforms and black boots, yelling through megaphones, "All Italian soldiers must surrender their weapons immediately. Resistance will be met with force. Civilians stay in your homes." Italian Private Mario Rossi is standing guard outside the Basilica di San Pietro. He's 19 years old, from Naples, where his mother runs a small pizzeria. He joined the army 6 months ago because his father, who fought in World War I, told him it was his duty. Now, he holds his Carcano rifle, its wooden stock worn smooth from use, staring at the German tank in front of him. The tank's gun is pointed right at his chest. "What do we do, Sergeant?" he asks, his voice cracking. Sergeant Antonio Gallo, 40 years old, with a gray beard and a limp from a North Africa wound, shakes his head. "There's nothing we can do, Mario. We have no tanks, no artillery, no air support. We're outgunned. Surrender. Go home to your mother. She needs you." Mario drops his rifle. It hits the cobblestones with a clatter. A German soldier walks over, tall, with a scar on his neck, kicks the gun away, and shoves Mario into a group of other Italian prisoners. There are 50 of them, all young, all scared. "Move," the German yells, pushing Mario with the butt of his rifle. "You're going to a camp in Germany. Work or die, your choice." By noon, Germany had disarmed 100,000 Italian soldiers in Rome alone. Some were sent to concentration camps like Dachau, in Germany, or Mauthausen, in Austria, where they were forced to work in factories or mines. Others were drafted into the Italian Legion, a puppet force that fought for Germany, most deserted at the first chance. A few fought back. Small groups of Italian soldiers hid in the Apennine Mountains, forming resistance bands with rifles and grenades they'd hidden. But most were too scared, too tired, or too confused to fight. Rome was now a German city. While Germany was taking Rome, the Allies were landing in southern Italy. On September 9, 1943, 2 Allied forces hit the beaches. 50,000 U.S. troops, from the Fifth Army, led by General Mark Clark, landed at Salerno, a small port near Naples, and 80,000 British troops, from the Eighth Army, led by Montgomery, landed at Taranto, a naval base in the heel of Italy. The British had it easy. Taranto was defended by Italian soldiers who surrendered as soon as the first British tank rolled ashore. But the U.S. troops at Salerno faced hell. German General Eberhard von Mackensen, commander of the German 10th Army, had been warned about the landing. He sent 40,000 soldiers and 100 tanks, including Tiger I tanks, which could destroy a U.S. Sherman tank with one shot, to attack the U.S. beachhead. For 3 days, the Germans pushed the Allies back to the water. The beach was covered in bodies, burning landing craft, and abandoned weapons. U.S. soldiers called it Bloody Salerno. Private Joe Carter, a 21-year-old infantryman from Iowa, with a farm back home and a girlfriend named Mary, was in the thick of it. He was part of the 36th Infantry Division, the Texas Division, and he'd landed on D-Day, September 9, with AM-1 Garand rifle and a canteen full of water. "We were surrounded," he later said, sitting on his porch in Iowa in 1995, showing a scar on his arm. "German tanks were firing at us from every direction. I saw my best friend, Tommy, get hit by a tank shell. He was gone before I could reach him. I thought we'd never get off that beach. I prayed to God every night, just let me see Mary again." But the Allies had air support. US P-47 Thunderbolt planes flew in from Sicily, dropping bombs on German tanks. British warships, like the HMS Warspite, a battleship with 15-inch guns, fired at German positions from the sea, their shells landing with a boom that shook the ground. By September 12, the Germans retreated. They didn't have enough troops to hold Salerno and defend northern Italy at the same time. The Allies pushed north, taking Naples on October 1. Naples was a mess. German soldiers had destroyed the port, blowing up cranes and ships, and the city was starving. But the people cheered when the Allies arrived, throwing flowers, giving soldiers bread, and kissing their hands. "It was like they'd been waiting for us," Joe Carter said. "They kept saying, 'Grazie. Grazie. Thank you,' and giving us wine. I'd never felt so welcome." But northern Italy was a different story. Hitler didn't just want to occupy it, he wanted to turn it into a German province, part of his Third Reich. On September 12, 1943, he sent a team of 100 elite commandos, led by Otto Skorzeny, a tall, blonde soldier with a scar on his face, to free Mussolini from Campo Imperatore prison. The commandos flew in on gliders, landing on the prison's roof, which was covered in grass. They overpowered the Italian guards, who put up almost no resistance, and broke Mussolini out of his cell. Skorzeny told Mussolini, "Hitler sends his regards. You're going to Berlin." Mussolini cried when he heard that. He was a broken man, his hair was gray, his hands shook, and he'd lost 20 pounds in prison, but he still wanted power. Hitler met with him in Berlin on September 17, 1943. The Führer's office was grand, with red carpets and a large portrait of himself, but Mussolini looked small in his chair. Hitler told him, "You will lead a new Italian government, the Italian Social Republic, based in Salò, a small town on Lake Garda. You will help Germany fight the Allies and the Italian resistance. If you fail, I will have you shot." Mussolini agreed. He moved to Salò in October 1943, and the Salò Republic was born. But it was a puppet government. Germany controlled its army, the Republican National Guard, made up of 50,000 Italian fascists, its economy. Germany stole 80% of Italy's grain and fuel, and its laws, anyone who opposed the Salò Republic was arrested. The Salò Republic's secret police, called the WWII, tortured and killed thousands of Italians. By October 1943, Germany occupied 70% of Italy, everything north of Rome, including Milan, Turin, Venice, and Florence. The country was split in two, the south, controlled by the Allies and the Italian government in exile, led by Badoglio, who was in Brindisi, the north, controlled by Germany and the Salò Republic. Italians were trapped in the middle. They couldn't go south, German checkpoints were everywhere, and they couldn't stay north, they risked being drafted into the Salò army or arrested as traitors. Maria Bianchi, a 22-year-old teacher from Milan, with brown hair and a love for Dante's poetry, lived in northern Italy during the occupation. She taught at a small school in the suburbs, but the Germans had taken over the building. "Every day, German soldiers walked down our street," she said in a 1985 interview. "They'd break into houses at night, looking for resistance fighters or radios, which were banned. We weren't allowed to listen to Allied broadcasts. If they found a radio, they'd arrest the whole family. We were scared to talk, scared to go out at night. It was like living in a prison. I'd hide my students' textbooks. The Germans wanted us to teach Nazi history, not Italian history, under the floorboards. If they found them, I'd be shot." Life in northern Italy was brutal. Germany needed food, fuel, and weapons for its war effort, so it stole from Italians. By 1944, 2 million Italians were starving. German soldiers took grain from farmers, leaving them with nothing to eat, fuel from factories, so cars and trucks couldn't run, and clothes from stores, so people froze in winter. They even took church bells, melting them down to make artillery shells. In Venice, they stole 100 wooden boats, gondolas included, to use as transport. In Florence, they took paintings from museums, including works by Michelangelo, to send to Germany. But the Italian people didn't give up. They fought back, forming resistance groups called Partigiani, partisans. The Partigiani were ordinary people, farmers, teachers, students, even priests. They hid in the Apennine Mountains, living in caves and cabins, and attacked German convoys, blew up bridges, and killed German officers. By 1944, there were 250,000 Partigiani in northern Italy, split into 200 groups. Luigi Moretti was a 25-year-old Partigiano from Turin. He'd been a factory worker before the war, making cars. "We didn't have much," he said in a 1970 documentary. "Some old rifles, stolen from German armories, a few grenades, we made them from dynamite and bottle caps, and a lot of courage. We'd attack a German truck at night, usually when the moon was bright, so we could see, and take the food and fuel. Then we'd run back to the hills before the Germans could catch us. It was dangerous, if we were caught, we'd be shot. But we had to fight. For our families, for our country. My sister was arrested by the WWII because she gave us bread. They killed her. I fought for her." Germany responded with terror. They called it reprisals, killing civilians to punish the Partigiani. In March 1944, German soldiers attacked the village of Civitella in Val di Chiana, a small town in Tuscany. They accused the villagers of helping the Partigiani. A group of Partigiani had attacked a German convoy near the village. The soldiers rounded up 213 men, women, and children, including 50 babies and toddlers, and took them to a field. They shot them all, then burned the village to the ground. The bodies were left in the field for weeks, no one dared to bury them. It wasn't an isolated incident. Germany killed 30,000 Italian civilians during the occupation. They destroyed 500 villages, including Oradour-sur-Glane in France, but that's another story. They sent 700,000 Italians to concentration camps, 200,000 of them never came back. Most died of starvation, disease, or torture. But the Partigiani didn't stop. They kept fighting, even when things looked hopeless. And they got help from the Allies, who dropped weapons and supplies to them by plane. The Allies would fly over the Apennines at night, dropping crates of rifles, ammunition, and food, canned meat, chocolate, and cigarettes, with parachutes. The Partigiani would light fires to guide the planes, then hide the supplies in caves. "That chocolate was the best thing I ever tasted," Luigi Moretti said. "I shared it with the kids in the village. They hadn't had chocolate in years." By June 1944, the Allies had pushed north to Rome. The German 10th Army had retreated to the Gustav Line, but the Allies broke through after months of fighting. On June 4, 1944, U.S. troops, from the 5th Army, entered Rome. The city was packed with Italians, cheering and throwing flowers. "It was like a party," Joe Carter said. "People were hugging us, giving us wine and bread. Old women were kissing our cheeks. A little girl gave me a drawing she'd made, of an American soldier and an Italian flag. I still have that drawing." But northern Italy was still under German control. The Allies kept pushing north, fighting through the Apennine Mountains and the Gothic Line, another German fortification. It was slow, bloody work, each mile cost 1,000 Allied lives. By April 1945, the Allies reached Milan. The Partigiani rose up, attacking German soldiers in the streets. They took control of the city's radio station and broadcast, "Milan is free. Fight the Germans. Join us." On April 28, 1945, a group of Partigiani, led by Walter Addizio, a 30-year-old factory worker, captured Mussolini and his mistress, Clara Petacci, near the town of Dongo. Mussolini was wearing a German uniform, trying to escape to Switzerland. The Partigiani took them to a small village, shot them, Mussolini was hit in the chest, Petacci in the head, and hung their bodies upside down from a gas station in Milan's Piazza Loreto. Italians gathered around, cheering and throwing stones. A woman spat on Mussolini's body, this is for my son," she yelled. The Salò Republic was over. On May 2, 1945, General Heinrich von Vietinghoff, commander of German forces in Italy, signed a surrender document in Caserta, a town near Naples. The occupation was over. Italy was free, but it was in ruins. The numbers tell the story of Italy's 20-month nightmare. 400,000 Italian soldiers died in World War II, most after the September 1943 surrender. 200,000 fought for the Allies, 100,000 for Germany, 100,000 died in concentration camps. 300,000 Italian civilians died, killed by Germans, reprisals, Allied bombing, Rome was bombed 50 times, or starvation. 700,000 Italians were sent to concentration camps, 200,000 never came back. 500 villages were destroyed, 2 million Italians were left homeless, and Italy's economy was in shambles. It would take 10 years to recover. But Italy's surrender in September 1943 wasn't just a tragedy, it was a turning point in World War II. Here's why it mattered. First, it split the Axis. Italy was the first major Axis power to surrender. Japan would surrender in 1945, Germany in 1945. Hitler lost an ally, and he had to send 20 German divisions to Italy to replace the Italian army. Those divisions were needed on the Eastern Front, where the Soviets were pushing west, and the Western Front, where the Allies were preparing for D-Day, June 6, 1944. By tying up 500,000 German soldiers in Italy, the Allies made D-Day possible. Hitler couldn't send enough troops to Normandy to stop the invasion. Second, it gave the Allies a foothold in Europe. Before Italy surrendered, the Allies were stuck in North Africa and Sicily. After the surrender, they could land in Italy, push north, and attack Germany from the south. This was a second front that Hitler had feared for years. It forced Germany to fight a two-front war, east against the Soviets, south against the Allies, stretching its resources thin. Third, it inspired resistance movements across Europe. If Italy, once a loyal Axis ally, could turn against Hitler, other countries could too. Resistance groups in France, the Maquis, Belgium, the Resistance, and the Netherlands, the Underground, grew stronger, knowing the Allies were winning. They attacked German troops, blew up trains, and helped Allied pilots escape, all because they saw Italy's courage. For Italians, the surrender and occupation were a lesson in courage and resilience. They'd been betrayed by their government, Mussolini, betrayed by their ally, Germany, and invaded by two armies. But they fought back. They hid Partigiani in their basements, they sabotaged German convoys by cutting train tracks, and they never gave up hope. They learned that freedom isn't something you wait for, it's something you fight for. Today, Italy remembers September 3, 1943, not as a day of shame, but as a day of hope. It's the day Italy chose to end a terrible war, even though it meant facing more suffering. In Rome, there's a monument to the Italian soldiers who died after the surrender, located in the Piazza Venezia, with the names of 100,000 soldiers carved into stone. In Milan, there's a museum dedicated to the Partigiani, housed in a former factory, with exhibits of weapons, photographs, and diaries. Every year, on September 3, Italians gather to honor the dead. They lay flowers at monuments, sing patriotic songs, and tell stories of the Partigiani. Maria Bianchi, the teacher from Milan, lived to be 98. Before she died in 2019, she wrote a book about her experiences, My Life Under the German Occupation, which became a bestseller in Italy. In the book's last chapter, she wrote, "We learned that freedom isn't free. It costs blood, tears, and courage. But it's worth it. Because no one, no dictator, no army, can take away your right to be free." I taught my students that lesson every day. I hope they never forget it. The story of Italy's 1943 surrender isn't just about a war. It's about people, ordinary people, caught in the middle of a global conflict. It's about a country that made a mistake, joining the Axis, then fought to fix it. It's about a teacher who hid textbooks, a soldier who surrendered to go home, a partigiano who fought for his sister. It's about resistance, resilience, and the power of hope. 80 years later, we still talk about September 1943. Not just because it changed World War II, but because it reminds us, even when things look darkest, we can choose to fight for what's right. Even when we're betrayed, we can choose to forgive. Even when our country is split, we can choose to unite. That's the legacy of Italy's 1943 surrender. That's why we'll never forget.